have a personality disorder. So the answer is less than about 10% obviously do not.
There are more close links with IPV for borderline personality disorder than narcissistic personality disorder, correct, sir?
I'm not going to agree with that.
No?
I'm not saying there are more links. I would say to you, there are absolute, if you're asking me if there are links, the answer is absolutely. If you're saying to me more, I can show studies, say yes, so studies say that. That has not been absolutely definitively correlated. No.
No.
Absolutely not.
MDMA. What is it?
Ecstasy.
Yeah. And what's the normal dosage of ecstasy for people who use ecstasy?
Again, I couldn't tell you the quote unquote normal dose because honestly speaking, no one knows what they're getting when they're using it, right? It's not regulated, so.
But the effects of ecstasy enhance sense of well-being?
At low doses, the answer is yes. I'm going to gather when you're using it at higher doses and develop tolerance, you develop the sympathomimetic effects, which are not so enhanced well-being.
Increased extroversion, that's a symptom?
Again, at low dose, you are 100% right. At low amounts, you are 100% right. It is an entactogen. We feel closer to people. That's what people who use it say. They feel close to people, warmth to people, 100%. But with continual use and higher doses, it could be fatal.
Right.
So that's not well-being. I don't know if I call that well-being.
So continued use at higher doses, MDMA can be fatal, correct?
Correct.
What if you took 8 to 10 tablets of MDMA?
What if you took again, you don't know what it's very hard to say that. You don't know what it's, what's the word I'm looking for? Contaminated with, okay? You can't just say, hey, let me just take 8 to 10 pure ecstasy and see what happens.
Yeah.
That's not gonna happen. So what I would say to you, again, because substance abuse are unpredictable, they are not regulated, no one knows what they're going to. No one has any idea whether it's going to cause this empathic entactogen effect at very low doses, or is it going to cause the increase, it's like a stimulant, like cocaine and stuff we talk about like that. No one knows what's going to happen. It's not regulated. And no one knows if you're using with other substances either, like other stimulants.
Or if you mix it with alcohol.
Or if you mix it with alcohol. No one knows if it's going to be potentially worse.
Right. But this is a potentially lethal combination. 8 to 10 MDMA tablets and alcohol.
This is a potentially toxic combination.
Right.
Can it kill you? Yeah, I mean, it is a potentially toxic combination. That's true.
Ever heard of someone cutting off their own finger on MDMA?
Have I ever heard of it?
Yeah.
No, I can only give you one example.
Hadn't seen that one before. Okay. So, Seroquel. That one puts you to sleep, right?
If you want to phrase a barbiturate putting you to sleep, then the answer is yes.
Yeah, you heard Mr. Depp talking about sometimes being on the nod, right?
And again, I think I explained Seroquel very well this morning.
Good. I'm going to ask him a few more questions.
Oh, okay. Okay.
All right. You kept making references to street value. Why were you doing that?
Because that's why people with substance use disorder use quetiapine and Seroquel.
Say it again, I'm sorry.
That's why people who use quetiapine or Seroquel can it sells on the street because it's so barbiturate-like in effect.
Right, but you said that Mr. Depp had a prescription.
There are many substance use disorder patients who have prescriptions for Adderall and quetiapine from their doctor, and that doesn't mean they're not getting high out of it. That doesn't take much. Doctors like to believe what patients have to say. They're not going to go in there being expert witness testimony. All I'm telling you is that in people who have substance use disorder, it is not uncommon. And the thought was initially that because quetiapine was not addicting, that it's safe to give in people with substance use disorders, when in fact, we absolutely know it has street value. We absolutely know that for a fact.
Right, but my point about this is you made a bunch of testimony about street value, but you knew at the time you made the testimony that Mr. Depp, in fact, had a prescription.
He also had a prescription for oxycodone and roxicodone. Does that count? Because that's also probably not a good thing. It's just because you have a prescription doesn't mean that.
I think Mr. Depp would agree with you it wasn't a good thing.
Just because you have a prescription doesn't mean you can't abuse it.
No, I'm not suggesting you're abusing it. I'm just wondering why your testimony was in any way tied to street value when every single drug you referenced, Mr. Depp had legally.
Again, you can have prescription substance abuse, and we know that, correct? No, I shouldn't be asking that. We can have prescription substance use disorders, and that's not uncommon if you look at the opiate epidemic that we're living in right now. We can have that. That's not an uncommon thing. Unfortunate, but uncommon. Not uncommon.
So, Seroquel, I think you described as a sleeping agent when used off-label?
When I saw what?
Sleeping agent, Seroquel, when used off-label?
When used off-label, it's used. It can be used sleeping agent. Yes.
Right. So, Mr. Depp's use of Seroquel could account for some of the photos we saw in this trial, where he's asleep in a chair.
Again, what I would say to you is that if you have a substance use disorder, you are using it to be knocked out. Yes, I agree. But I'm not sure at the end of the day if she had vomitus over you either, because I've never seen Seroquel do that. So when he was passed out in the chair, he also had vomitus over him. I've never seen Seroquel do that ever.
Neurontin is another one of the drugs you testified about. That one's also prescribed, right?
Yes, it is.
And what's the prescription for that?
What's it used for? And what's its indication, or what's its used
what's its indication?
I mean, its indication is for seizures. It may have one pain indication. Again, I'm not a neurologist, so I can't tell you exactly if it does. But it's chronically used off-label for pain. It's used off-label for anxiety.
Right. And what's its effect? That's another one that'll put you to sleep, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, sure, 100%.
Right. And you made reference to a picture. There's been testimony around that picture that Mr. Depp fell asleep with ice cream in his hand. That's not vomitous, right?
I was told it was vomitous.
Okay. You talked about the fact that Mr. Depp indicates that from time to time he uses an earpiece.
I read that, yes.
Okay. Did you read the testimony of Mr. Wyatt, who told you what was being pumped into that earpiece?
Yeah. I mean, if I remember right, I mean, I think it was lines, right?
No, it was music.
It was music, not his line?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So if Mr. Depp was listening to music rather than being fed his lines, does that change your opinion as to his cognitive function?
If he was never fed his lines through the earpiece, which I know he was, but read he was, and that may have been that example, Mr. Wyatt may have said that it was music. I guess the question is, were you having the music during the actual talking of your lines? Is that what you're saying to me?
Well, if you can do two things at once, that's a pretty high cognitive function, isn't it, sir?
It's a very good point, actually. Divided attention is something humans have a lot of trouble in. Yeah. So, for instance, we have trouble driving and putting on using our cell phones and direct. So, divided attention, humans actually are not very good at. I'll put that out there.
But
in general, not just Mr. Depp, in general.
But Mr. Depp is pretty good at acting. You acknowledge that early on.
Absolutely. Well, better than me, so I know that.
Because you don't act. In fact, you don't know about acting.
You're right. I have no idea about acting.
And you don't know how prevalent the use of earpieces are in acting.
Again, I know nothing about acting.
Irrespective of the fact you know nothing about acting, you've testified that Mr. Depp's use of an earpiece is somehow a cognitive deficit?
So if I was giving a lecture and I was fed my lines, I would think there's a cognitive deficit. So and maybe I'm wrong. Like I said, maybe I could be wrong. Maybe Hollywood stars get lines fed to them through earpieces all the time, and I don't know. That could be, it sounded to me to be unusual if you're doing a movie and you don't know the lines. But like you said, I'm just judging it on what I do with lectures, and that would never happen.
If you gave lectures, you wouldn't use an earpiece, but you're not going to tell anybody how to act.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
I said if you gave lectures, you wouldn't use an earpiece, but you're not telling anybody how to act.
Right, I would not use an earpiece during lectures.
Right.
But I don't know what the standard for standard as Hollywood is for that. I have no idea.
Your testimony about the use of an earpiece, as maybe you were wrong. You're comfortable with the fact that you may have made a mistake there?
No, because I think in the basis of what I've read about it, I'm comfortable that I don't believe that actors are routinely given their entire script through earpieces. I find that hard to believe.
Yeah,
but
and there's not one whit of evidence that this ever happened here.
I guess what I said. I just said I find it hard to believe. I didn't say it. I said I find it hard to believe. That's all I said.
Oh, yeah, but what you found hard to believe, sir, was that every line of the script was pumped through an earpiece. Where did you ever get the idea that occurred?
That's what that's what I read in the court review, the court evidence. That's where I got it from.
Right. And you know whether Marlon Brando used an earpiece?
Isn't he dead?
Yeah.
So the answer is no. He does not use one now.
Oh, no, I used the past tense, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry. I know nothing. I will concede to you, I know nothing about acting. I will concede to you 100%. If that is the standard and people are done that's acting, then I apologize and that was wrong on my part. If that's the standard, I'm wrong. I don't know.
Okay. Let's go with that. No further questions.
All right. How long is your return?
A bit. You may want to take.
All right. Let's go ahead and break for lunch then, ladies and gentlemen. Again, do not do any outside research. Do not discuss your testimony with anybody, okay?